Hey, welcome back to Real Takes, where we are all movie love all the time with no spoilers and no plot recaps. I'm Stott, and tonight we are continuing our new release adjacent series, where we use a new release as a jumping off point for talking about a film that I'm passionate about and want people to see. So there's a new film out on Netflix called The Harder They Fall, which is a Western, which is one of the oldest, most ubiquitous US film genres, but it's a new lens on the Western. It's a fictional story built around real Black cowboys' lives. And it has a fantastic cast. Idris Elba, Regina King, Lakeith Stanfield, Delroy Lindo, Jonathan Majors, and Zazie Beetz, who is one of my new favorite actresses and who plays Stagecoach Mary, who in real life was the first Black woman to be contracted by the US Post Office to deliver the mail from town to town. And she was only the second woman to be contracted by the post office to do this. And apparently she was renowned for her ability to protect the mail from thieves and bandits and robbers. She doesn't play an employee of the post office in The Harder They Fall, but she's a pretty great character, as are all the other characters. So I'm excited to see this new take on the Western, and it's not the first Black Western. There have been other Black Westerns. In fact, Sidney Poitier's directorial debut was a Western called Buck and the Preacher that also starred Harry Belafonte and Ruby Dee, and it was about the Black wagon trains from the South to the West after the Civil War, and how plantation owners would send gangs of white people to attack these wagon trains, destroy whatever property the freed Black slaves had, to try to force them to come back to the South and remain exploited workers. A story that has not been told very often. We'll probably be going over that movie at some point in Real Takes in the future, but tonight, the reclaimed Western made me think of Spike Lee's most recent film, Da 5 Bloods, which came out in 2020 and is a reclamation of the Vietnam War film for Black America and Black storytelling. Now, the truth is, Westerns aren't really my favorite genre, and war movies aren't really my favorite genre, but a great film in any genre is a great film, and great acting in any genre is great acting. And on top of that, I am way into reclaiming traditional forms to tell new stories and bring truth to light that has not been told before. So that gets me very excited and passionate. So tonight we are shining some movie love on Da 5 Bloods, directed by Spike Lee. Now, the film, as it was originally written, was not a movie about Black US veterans. The original script was by, I must consult my notes, Danny Bilson and Paul DeMeo, and it was about 3 white veterans and 1 Black veteran. And they were actually working with Oliver Stone to develop the movie, and at some point Oliver Stone walked away, and in fact, in an interview with Spike Lee and the writers, they all said Oliver Stone wouldn't tell any of them why he walked away. But when he did, these writers thought of Spike Lee and they took the script to him, and he liked it a lot. But he realized that he wanted to use it to tell the story of Black veterans of the Vietnam War, which is criminally undertold story in the world of film, given that at the time of the Vietnam War, Black people were 10% of the US population, but they represented 30% of the soldiers fighting in Vietnam. Yet we've had no stories in film like this one until Spike Lee made it, which is true of so many Black stories over the last 20 years. I mean, Spike Lee has just been, telling so many stories that hadn't been told honestly and forthrightly in film in our country. And he's, made a lot of great movies and also done a great service on this level. So, and he really used this script and this story to highlight, the wound of racism, like the deep wound of racism, and then the deep wound of America's imperialism and, the sort of corrupt nature of the war in Vietnam, and how those wounds like fed each other and how they're actually all connected. And they're, we're still playing out those wounds today, right? And when they first started making the movie, we weren't yet in this next chapter of racial reckoning that George Floyd's murder brought on in the country. But, this film kind of meets this time perfectly. So this film too has a great cast. Delroy Lindo and Jonathan Majors, who are both in The Harder They Fall, are also in this film. Also Clarke Peters and Isaiah Whitlock Jr. and Norm Lewis are in the film. And a favorite of mine, Jean Reno, has a small part in the movie. So great cast. And Spike Lee really shot this film as like the epic Vietnam War film with the kind of feeling that we have from the big epics of the 70s and 80s made by Oliver Stone and Francis Ford Coppola. And he shot, so the movie's about 4 Black veterans of the Vietnam War who go back to Vietnam to try to find the remains of their murdered squad leader, who's played by Chadwick Boseman. I'm like, I can't believe I didn't say his name. And his one of his 2 last acting performances, Chadwick Boseman gives a beautiful performance in this film. So they return to try to find his remains. And they also are returning to try to find some gold that they discovered during combat and buried, hoping to find it after the war. And in the plot, it's acknowledged that they had thought about going sooner, but they didn't make it. And so it's set during the Trump presidency, let's put it that way. And there are 2 things. I mean, I think the film is so important and effective on so many levels. But there are 2 things that I really wanted to highlight. And the first is that, the film happens sort of on 2 levels. There's the current day timeline of the veterans going back to Vietnam. And then there are flashbacks to the battle where the gold was discovered and Chadwick Boseman's character was killed. And the flashbacks are all shot in 16 millimeter, which was the kind of film that news agencies were using to film the Vietnam War in the 60s. So it has that same visual texture that, is so familiar to us of Vietnam footage. But Spike Lee did this thing that originally came out of a budget constraint, but ended up being a really powerful tool in the film, which is in the flashbacks, the actors from today just play themselves without any special makeup to make them look younger, without a de-aging process to make them look younger, and without using other actors. And Spike Lee has said that he really hates it in flashbacks when different actors are used to play, older characters that we've already met. And he knew that he didn't have the money to do the de-aging thing, for instance, that Martin Scorsese used in The Irishman. So he just settled on this idea of having, Delroy Lindo and Clarke Peters and the 2 other veterans play themselves in these flashbacks. And it actually lends this incredible texture to the flashback scenes, because we know, we've already learned, but we feel so deeply how these experiences are embedded in these people's lives forever. And the pain of what they saw and what they went through and what they lost is with them forever. And we're living a memory with them rather than flashing back to a pristine moment in history that's disconnected from now. It creates this whole blending of past and present that I found really powerful and pretty unique. Like I the way it was written about, I don't think it's been done almost ever. And it really hit me and moved me in when I first watched the film. And then the other thing I want to talk about is Delroy Lindo. Delroy Lindo, who plays the vet who's suffering the most from PTSD. And Delroy Lindo gives a performance. I mean, when I watched the movie, when it first came out, I thought he was going to win the Oscar. I was like, I haven't seen anything like this ever. And there's the film's a tragedy in its deepest self, and it has a sort of Shakespearean quality to it almost. But Delroy Lindo's performance has the character of like a great tragic figure performance without putting anything on, without overdoing it. I mean, he's so present in what his character is struggling with. And he had problems with some of the choices in the script. He actually talked to Spike Lee about it before accepting the role, saying, I'm not sure if I can do this, a very particular thing. And Spike Lee was like, thought about it and then said, no, I need the character to be that. And then Delroy Lindo sort of found his way into accepting this part of the character. But I was riveted by his performance, and there are some monologues toward the end of the film that are just some of the best acting I've seen in years. And I was really heartbroken that even though his performance was lauded by critics, that he was largely overlooked in the awards conversation of last year. I just was stunned that he didn't get more attention, because the level of commitment he had, the level of emotional commitment without any kind of false overacting, which would have been so easy to do with what his character goes through, was really inspiring for me, and I'm very passionate about it, and I want everyone to see that performance. And I'm assuming that behind the scenes it's brought him more attention and given him more opportunities. I mean, he's been working hard for many years as an actor, so I think he's doing okay. But he's a great actor, and I would love to see him starring in more films in the years to come, because he's a great actor. Now I'm repeating myself. So I will just say, if you want to watch some great acting, if you want to see a Vietnam War movie, unlike any Vietnam War movie you've ever seen before, watch Da 5 Bloods. It's pretty violent. It's a war movie. There's violence in the past. There's violence in the present. Some people talk about this movie as like a Vietnam War movie meets Treasure of the Sierra Madres, the classic, incredible John Huston film, and there's some accuracy to that. And some people criticized it. They said sort of Spike Lee kind of threw too much at us, or had distractions going on, and I can see that point of view, but the cumulative power of this film is so deep for me that I say Spike gets to try what Spike gets to try. So I hope you are as moved by this film as I was. And if you've seen it, please comment below and let me know what you think. And I will see you next Wednesday. Thanks for watching Real Takes. Hit the subscribe button below so the algorithms will tell you when new episodes are out. And if you want to support Real Takes, please visit my Patreon page, where you can join at any tier from $2 to $100 per thing I make. The $15 tier is specifically about supporting Real Takes, and you'll get behind-the-scenes information and be thanked in future videos. See you next Wednesday.